together and connecting, up here, but really like taking time to foster relationships and risk having, differing contexts and really reaching across, being a bridge rather than a gap. I really hope that this conversation spans outside of the faith community to all of the world, really. That's my hope.
Dr. Perry, your thoughts?
Well, this sentencing process is not a time of celebration. Actually, it's the beginning of closure for the family, and I want to emphasize the beginning of closure for the family, but it's the continuation of much needed work for reform within our community in terms of our local law enforcement and our justice system here. And so there's a lot of work that is taking place, and we're hoping that the end result is that our community becomes a model of what reconciliation looks like, what harmony looks like. We have quite a bit of people doing a lot of work to make sure that we get right this whole thing of race relations. Our clergy understands that if we're going to herald that message, we first of all have to exemplify it. And so we've been doing a better job as clergy, forging relationships so that we can be an example of that it's possible. And so the hope is that God starts something right here in Brunswick and that it spills over into the nation and it helps us to be a lot less divided.
Well, it's possible. We just have to be committed to doing it. Dr. John Perry, Reverend Kate Buckley, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you. We'll take a quick break and get back to court in Brunswick, Georgia, right after this short break.
More Americans choose ABC News, America's #1 news source. This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
All right, we're going to move up. We're surrounded by people squeezing into this bomb shelter.
Run, urgent delivery, run.
Not afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live events.
This is the moment.
Streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
You just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
Seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know,
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it? Feel smarter.
feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
It's all about you.
The ladies you love, the hottest topics happening now. There's only one place to find it all.
You guys are having the hard conversations. I love The View.
The most watched #1 daytime talk show is The View. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
It was a scary time. In the 70s, you had multiple bodies showing up in Los Angeles.
There were so many murders happening. You had to have a name for it. Serial killer.
There was a human head in there. This was premeditated evil.
We have this clock. This person is going to do this again.
It's me against the killer. Who's going to win?
We'll see who laughs last.
What came next was unlike anything they had ever seen.
ABC News honored winner of 9 Edward R. Murrow Awards, more than any other network, including winning for the 3rd straight year the award for overall excellence in television. ABC News is America's #1 news source. With so much at stake, more Americans turn here than any other newscast. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir, America's #1 newscast and the #1 program on television.
And hello, everyone. I'm Kira Phillips. Thanks so much for streaming with us. We are awaiting the sentencing decision right now for the 3 men convicted of murdering Ahmaud Arbery. We will bring that to you live as soon as it happens. Meanwhile, other stories that we are following for you, including breaking news. Bahamian officials have confirmed that Oscar-winning actor Sidney Poitier, who helped break the color barrier in Hollywood, has died at the age of 94. A civil rights icon, Poitier was the first black man to win an Academy Award for Best Actor for his role in Lilies in the Field. We'll follow his life and legacy throughout the day. The Supreme Court is hearing oral arguments in 2 challenges to the Biden administration's vaccine mandates for millions of workers. A coalition of Republican-led states and industry and trade groups challenging the requirement. They argue that the administration exceeded its authority under the Occupational Safety and Health Act, or OSHA, to regulate workplaces. Those cases on emergency appeal right now after a lower court blocked the mandates. A ruling expected in the next few weeks. There was heavy shooting overnight in Kazakhstan, where unprecedented mass protests against the authoritarian regime are sweeping the country. Security forces using live fire, clashing with armed protesters. At least 25 people and 18 service personnel are killed. Russian troops now moving in to support the regime after a plea for help from Kazakhstan's president. Other former Soviet nations also sending troops amid fears the death toll will rise. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back right after this.
Want to understand what happened January 6th, you really have to rewind the clock to really look at where that anti-government movement started from.
We came from an era of Ruby Ridge, Waco,
the Bundy Ranch.
Federal agents clashing with protesters, some from armed militia groups.
this constant drumbeat of the federal government taking away their rights.
Trump's presidency legitimized the fringe ideas, and it says it's okay.
You have Trump encouraging these agitators.
Let me tell you, this election was rigged.
Be there on January 6th. That is an invitation.
And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
It's easy to miss the slow boil, and in a lot of ways, the militia movement is arguably the slow boil.
If you have millions of people willing to believe lies, is it any surprise that you could have a January 6th? I'm Jason Van Tatenhove. I'm a classically trained painter. At one point in time, about 15, 16 years ago, I was considered one of the top rising artists at the Denver art scene. My day consists of, waking up, taking in the news, and writing all day.
Hey guys, Jason Van Taten of Oath Keepers here.
I did it with the Oath Keepers, but I was doing it before then, and, something I've always done.
I have an important story that we need to get out there. Get back now! Many of you, like me, were very inspired by the actions that happened at Bundy Ranch. It was the first time in our country's recent history that good Americans stood up and said, you know what? We're not going to let this happen on our watch. And we went and we stood shoulder to shoulder with some of the best Americans in this country.
Remember the video? Yeah, I do. I just got to own it. You know what? I was swept up. I was excited. And I was wrong. And I feel awful about it. I think I needed a wider, pulled-out view to kind of understand things better.
The Oath Keepers are a potentially violent extremist group. Stuart Rhodes founded the Oath Keepers in 2009.
My handguns here. I've got at least 2 spare magazines on this side.
The Oath Keepers have an active online presence, and they're constantly recruiting people from military and law enforcement with their videos.
The Oath Keepers aren't just made up of people at the fringes. They're actually veterans, police officers, people who work in these institutions that actually define American political structure.
Their entire reason for being is to train together to be prepared to defend their territory or defend their state.
If you rewind the clock, a key part of this constant drumbeat of the federal government was basically taking away their rights, and that they should be prepared one day to have to stand up and maybe even take physical action, was in 2014 in a remote part of Nevada, the Bundy Ranch.
A dramatic standoff caught on tape tonight. Federal rangers up against a rancher.
Ammon Bundy and his father Cliven were grazing cattle on federal land and refused to pay grazing fees to the government, the Bureau of Land Management, that by all accounts were legal.
I have no contract with the United States government. I'm paying grazing fees for management. That's what BLM was supposed to be. And they were managing my ranch out of business.
The Bundy family is convinced that the federal government has been overstepping their bounds for years, and it ended up being a confrontation with the federal government.
There was a message that was sent out by the Bundys, called for our militia to come. The range war begins tomorrow at the Bundy Ranch at 9:30 a.m.
A real Wild West showdown. Federal agents clashing with protesters, some from armed militia groups.
So when the call comes out, it makes perfect sense that the Oath Keepers would ride in to the rescue. In essence, they are the cavalry.
There was that big armed standoff, those iconic images of the bridge and the BLM agents down in the corral. Their guns pointed across the way at each other. It seemed like a very historic moment to me, and I wanted to go find out what was really happening, kind of boots on the ground.
This video went viral. The video shows the government clashing with protesters and even shows Ammon Bundy being tased. And in response, the Oath Keepers and other militia groups descended on Bunkerville.
This confrontation is the first time really that you see militias from around the country actually come in an operational role to confront the federal government.
Law enforcement or the Bureau of Land Management, the folks that were trying to end things peaceably, they realized they were outgunned.
Late today, the government released Rancher Bundy's cattle, packed up and left, to cheers and jeers. A tense situation diffused, for now.
They do what is necessary in order for there not to be the kind of bloodshed that we see in a Waco or Ruby Ridge. But in doing so, it ends up giving the appearance that a group of militiamen had beaten the federal government.
Stuart Rhodes and Ammon Bundy, they broadcast that victory online for the whole world to see.
What happened today was a choice between bending the knee and standing up. And you folks stood up. So, yeah. The battle has been won, but the war is far over.
The American dream is dead.
The newest candidate for president, billionaire Donald Trump.
About a year after the Bundy Ranch standoff, Donald Trump comes on the political scene.
He rides down the golden escalator at Trump Towers and tells us things that just seem unthinkable.
They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists.
Knock the crap out of them, would you? Seriously. We are going to drain the swamp in Washington.
Trump's candidacy really spoke to the militia movement and the anti-government movement.
Our purpose is to restore and defend the Constitution.
Now, Ammon Bundy is a hero, and he would be the one that would lead in effort to push back against any federal control and to say, well, I too have resisted the federal government, and you can do it too.
Tonight, armed protesters have taken over a federal wildlife refuge, determined to stay as long as it takes, and prepared to use violence.
The Malheur Wildlife Refuge takeover was really Ammon Bundy's own operation.
Love you! We support you! It began with a peaceful march, protesting land rights and the sentencing of 2 local ranchers convicted of burning federal land.
It was based on the fact that he was upset that a father and son were being sent back to prison for arsons on federal land that they had admitted to, and they didn't want Ammon's help.
The Hammonds have turned themselves in?
But Ammon was convinced that them going back to prison was federal overreach.
It is the duty of the people to put that government back in its place.
And so he went to the refuge and took it over to protest them being sent back to prison.
They tested the waters with Bundy Ranch, and they succeeded, and then they went and took it further, took over government property. It had a major, major effect on day-to-day life there.
So that is the refuge headquarters. You can see the beautiful tile roofs on the buildings. It became a real problem for the community. I started pulling together community meetings. About 400 or 500 people met in the high school auditorium, and a group of people came in, about 40 or 50 people. And it just took my breath away as I watched them, because I realized they were all going to the top of the bleachers, and they had fully circled the entire high school auditorium. And then I realized Ammon Bundy's one of them.
Tonight, militia leader Ammon Bundy showed up uninvited to a community meeting in Burns and got shouted down.
Mr. Bundy, be very clear. I'm happy to meet you. Any place outside my county, it is time for you to go home.
Rising tensions in the armed standoff in Oregon that is showing no signs of ending.
We have no intent of pointing a gun at anybody, but let's be clear here. Who's pointed guns at me? Who's pointed guns at Ammon?
Hey guys, this is Jason Pantano with Oath Keepers Media. I'm here at the Malheur Refuge with my friend Lavoy Fickham.
Now, it's not like we were great friends or anything, but we had conversations and, interviews and stuff, and I actually, tried to talk Lavoy out of Malheur the day before. I was one of the last calls made to him, trying to plead with him, saying, look, this is not going to go well. It's not going to end well. But he had already made his decision. He was ready to stand and die there.
I'm not going to jail. Would I sit out here with my little rifle?
Lavoy Fickham was the spokesperson through most of the event at Malheur.
It's not a line in the sand. A line in the snow.
The guy that got sucked into Bundy's strange view of the U.S. Constitution.
The people have to take possession, and then the law will follow.
Wrote a book where he kind of hoped to die as a martyr.
Ammon Bundy, his brother, and Lavoy Fickham decide they need to go visit the county sheriff. They came upon a checkpoint orchestrated by the Oregon State Police and FBI.
And then Finnegan took off.
Got it. Are they shooting? Got it. Hang on. Okay, they're shooting. Hang on.
He went around the vehicle and hit that deep snow. And
Go ahead, shoot me. Damn. You have to shoot me.
law enforcement believed that he had a firearm, and he was shot.
Anytime there's anyone killed who's part of the movement, that person becomes a hero.
Do I think that Finnegan is a rallying cry? Yeah, I think it is.
Group leader Ammon Bundy and his brother were arrested in the shootout and could be seen handcuffed on the road.
They were acquitted. They were found not guilty. Federal authorities also had filed charges against Ammon Bundy for the 2014 standoff in Nevada, and that case ended up getting thrown out. So no charges stuck to Ammon Bundy.
This is what you get when government officials ignore the people.
The political elites in this country have used their power to enrich themselves at your expense.
Trump's candidacy and his presidency legitimized the Frankenstein monster. It takes all of these fringe ideas and it says once they rise to the mainstream, it's okay.
People were becoming more and more radicalized. And that kind of, to me, was absolutely the last straw. I had to just turn and walk away.
It's actually kind of laughable in hindsight to go back and say that there weren't any warning signs. It wasn't just warning signs or red flags, it was a neon billboard.
It's just a progression. You start at a ranch, you go to a government facility, and then you're at the Capitol. I mean, it is a progression.
There's a straight line that you can draw from these standoff events to January 6th.
If you have millions of people willing to believe lies, is it any surprise that you can have a January 6th?
Most powerful stories of our time, anytime. Nightline.
It was an extraordinary story.
A computer salesman was supposed to report to prison to begin a 17-year sentence.
They let him turn himself into jail with no escort.
No one thought he would run.
How do they catch her for 25 years? How do you do that?
Now, join the search, following the U.S. Marshals as they uncover new leads in a global manhunt. Can you help catch this fugitive? Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man? Listen and join the all-new Hunt wherever you get your podcasts.
Now streaming on ABC News Live 2020. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues. The Hunt. True crime 2020. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
Seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
But to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Now streaming on ABC News Live. It's all about you.
is turning upside down, though. It seems to get worse every week in one way or another. You know, Trump was an unknown, at least to me, and he resounded, you know, very well with the patriot community.
Trump had said so many outrageous and inflammatory and controversial things as a candidate. There was a sense, though, that once he was elected president, once he was sworn in, that the trappings of power would have a moderating influence on him.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
But that was blown apart on day one, just after he takes the oath of office.
This American carnage stops right here and stops right now.
Donald Trump doesn't moderate once he becomes president. He is every bit as abrasive, as extreme in his views, as willing to offend absolutely everybody. He is playing to the fringes of American politics as president of the United States.
Charlottesville was a turning point in our country.
You will not replace us.
And then, of course, when the president afterwards said,
Very fine people on both sides.
That was just like, bing, bing, bing. This is cool for us to do.
That the violence was acceptable, and it didn't stop there.
I said, please don't be too nice.
These are people. These are animals.
Definitely in the years between 2017 and January 6, 2021, we've seen just a continued escalation of online, anti-government, white supremacist, anti-other extremism.
These organizations at the fringe right of America can say, we have a president who understands us, we have a president who believes in us, and we have a president who condones our actions.
There are cases around the country, cases involving threats, attacks,
Give me my back of my head, bro. This is for Trump.
where Trump's name is invoked by the person who's committing an attack.
I think I said, please get out of my country, because I don't like him here. And this is why I like Trump. And he's doing the same thing as I feel, wants him out of our country.
I found not a single case like that, not one case for President Obama or for President George Bush.
The whole Trump era is this fascinating study of people feeling like somebody's standing up for them and empowering them to speak their minds.
And then at the start of 2020, you have this incredible merging of all of these dark forces. It was basically a cauldron, and the fuel on the fire was the COVID pandemic. You have lockdowns and masking, and that gives fresh fuel to the Proud Boys, to QAnon, to the Oath Keepers.
They latched right onto that, and they started just pumping it, And that's part of the gig is they look for these hot button topics.
I remember the day that the CDC put out the mask recommendations.
Well, I just don't want to wear one myself. It's a recommendation. They recommend it.
He tweeted in April of 2020, liberate Michigan, liberate Virginia. He encouraged armed militia groups protesting in their state capitals.
Look at the organization that Ammon Bundy's been putting together in Idaho, and how much of a cornerstone the anti-mask movement and the showdowns at the local government.
We have to knock down the doors of the Capitol building to enter in, to exercise that right, and that's exactly what I will do, and I hope many of you will be ready.
This is crazy.
Individuals ultimately see these things as encroaching on their constitutional, God-given rights. It's a ticking time bomb.
I've seen people where an election got stolen. And by the way, we're not going to let that happen to us.
It's pretty obvious if Trump does not win that it was rigged.
Because we have a rigged election. It's a rigged election. It's the only way we're going to lose.
He knew that it was looking bad, and he was laying the groundwork for claiming fraud even before the first ballot was cast.
This is stealing millions of votes.
There were all these claims about mail fraud. It just didn't exist. It didn't exist before the election. It didn't exist after the election.
I think the most dangerous speech that Donald Trump ever gave was the speech that he gave on election night when he came out at 2:30 in the morning.
We were getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election.
He claimed a victory when it started to look clear that he was headed towards defeat.
My fellow Americans, Biden won by a greater margin than Trump did over Hillary Clinton.